I think it is very top heavy weighted to the older generation, people that started 20, 25 years ago. And we discussed previously, they're in their fifth doom cycle now after COVID and Brexit and the credit crunch and trustonomics, and they haven't got the will or the energy to wait for the cycle to come back again. So there's a degree of people exiting the industry to a degree.
Welcome to the Property Funder podcast. I'm here with Martin Stewart and Mike Lawler. We're here for part two of our discussion and debate around the housing market and everything else in between. Part one, we covered a lot of ground, didn't we, chaps? We started talking about house price crashes, and before you know it, we were talking about euthanasia and universal basic income. We tried to stay off politics, and that failed miserably. But I think we're going to start talking about the future of the mortgage market. We did touch on the impact of AI on jobs more generally, but obviously we are a property and finance focused podcast. So, Mike, starting with you, what do you see the future of the mortgage market looking like, particularly as Martin and I were talking about before off camera, with the demographic of the average mortgage broker in the UK being sort of north of 50 basically, and probably not going to be able to work forever. How do you see it playing out? What does the future look like?
Well, I think it's a very attractive industry for us to be in. You know, for my son, he's 13. I would really, really encourage him to become a mortgage broker. That's kind of my little dream, is that I'll have a business that he can take over. He's not that keen at the moment. He's too clever. So he's been watching a lot of Suits, wants to be a corporate lawyer. But I would encourage anyone to get into this. I mean, Mortgage Advice Bureau has a great academy where they really support new entrants into the marketplace. So I think CMAP is a very low level kind of entry. I think we need to kind of up the standards a little bit. It's, people can pass it, relatively quickly. I know that I could, and I'm no genius. So it just shows you that. I think that we could definitely do with improving the standards in our industry, but it's a great industry to be in. And I still think, even with AI coming in, I still think people will need advice. I'm going the opposite way. So a lot of people are just going online and fintech. I'm actually opening a shop front where people can come in, have a coffee and get face-to-face advice. So I'm backing a return to, some more old school mortgage broking where people want to sit down with someone. I think people are getting fed up with technologies and call centers and auto bots. I think there's, the best advice you're going to get is face-to-face over a coffee.
I think it's interesting you bringing it up. I wonder whether it's the demographic of the area that you serve, whether that's a key driver of that. I mean, I think where my challenge to that would be, and I think we touched on it maybe when we spoke last time, is that right now the average home buyer is average age is 35, knocking on the door of 40 as a first-time buyer. That's people who are not that much younger than myself, frankly, and in that context, they can still remember a world which was remotely analog. You spoke about your 13-year-old son. I've got a 14-year-old son. I think you've got a son a similar age, right? My oldest, he's, if he didn't have, he's mildly autistic. He likes to be in front of screens. He wants to be away from large groups of people. I think he'd probably much prefer to not have to have that human interaction, that face-to-face interaction, and I think that will be the truth for a lot of kids as well. I mean, does that factor into your thinking, or are you just thinking it's too far off?
No. I mean, things are advancing very quickly. If you'd have told me 5 years ago, when I go out, I would literally have my phone on me and a set of keys, and that would be it. I'd be paying for everything on my phone. I'd have looked at you and gone, I'm a late adapter. That's not me. There's absolutely no way I will be doing that. And the way that kids are, I think my son's, he's had a bad parenting for me, but he's had an iPad since he was about 18 months old. So what they can do with technology just blows your mind, and they just see things. I still like to play sort of computer games with him, and that he just sees it differently because this open gaming that we have, where as I grew up with sort of playing, they show my age, I'm 48, but the graphics weren't what they were now. We didn't have these kind of open universes that they do. You springing off walls that I just wouldn't think existed, when you're playing Fortnite, those kind of games. So they look at the world and they see it completely different to us. But with a lot of the people that I speak to, they still want someone to hold their hand, to give them advice. So whether that be their parents or a mortgage broker, before they put sort of push the button on whether they go for a 2-year fixed or a 5-year fixed, they want to chat that through with someone. So I think a lot of people want to do research on their phones and get the information out there, but before they press the button, they still want to speak to a human being. And I think there's definitely, from what I can see, a lot of demand for people wanting to meet face to face. I think a lot of people feel like we're missing that. There's always going to be people that will prefer to do it online. I love the fact that now we're in a cashless society, apart from when I get my hair cut or I go and see my dad down the pub. His pubs, they still only accept cash. But everything else is just, on your phone. I can't remember the last time I went into a bank. I very rarely go into a bank. The only time I do is when I've got like a dividend check or something like that, and you're meant to be able to do them on your phone, but I can't manage it because I'm not that technological. So I have to go into a bank for it. But I think there's a big demand for people wanting to get face-to-face advice. And I think, just me personally, I think that's the best way. And Martin's talked about this before, where unless you look someone in the kind of pupils of their eye, you don't really know what their true intentions are or what's going on in the background.
Well, I mean, I wonder if that will become increasingly a luxury, sort of luxury service where the rank and we've been talking about the haves and the have-nots, and I suppose, do you think that that's maybe where it goes with mortgage broking, where the vast majority of consumers are getting some sort of automated or robo advice, and then the bigger tickets, the higher earners, the people in with a bit more privilege are able to take advantage of that personal service. Because at the end of the day, like, I think, speaking as a consumer of mortgages, both commercial and residential, of course I feel much better knowing that there's a human I can pick up the phone to and say, look, what's going on with this? Help me out here. Bank's asking for this. It's a bit ridiculous, blah, blah, blah. But, I'm obviously in a relatively privileged position. I can take advantage of that. But fundamentally, is it still the case is that still going to be the case for the vast majority of people 5-10 years from now, Martin?
Well, so I was just going to say, it's a very good point just to me, because maybe I am in a little bubble, because most of the people that I do, it's like 2 people earning good incomes and they're getting huge help from their parents, huge, like 6-figure help is kind of the average deposit we deal with. So I think you've raised a really good point. Yeah,
well, and that's the thing, because being in that kind of, nice parts of North London, leafy parts of North London, that's going to be, where the average ticket size of the mortgages are going to be, high hundreds of thousands. You can justify, it's all the fees that you'll be able to earn from that. You can justify the time that you're going to put into that. Whereas if you're like Martin was saying, you're buying a 3-bedroom semi in Rotherham, not picking on Rotherham, but it's going to be a lot harder to justify that level of service for the fee that the broker's going to earn from that.
I think very linked to the previous podcast we did when we talked about the haves and the have-nots, all right? And there will be a smaller cluster of extremely wealthy individuals and a few satellites circling that, and a big tranche of individuals who can't access maybe advice. Yeah. So there is an advice gap issue potentially looming. Technology, we're in a world now where technology is driving behaviour, not the other way around. So when you talk about your son, my son's the same, your son, they see, when we say they see a different world, their world is digital and it is not our world. That will take a bit of time to filter through. Where we can benefit currently is that we are in a society that is information heavy and time short. All right. So we can get loads of information on anything we want via the internet, via AI, via social media. What we do with that information is where we come into play. So we can strip out a lot of the stuff the client thinks is important, and we tell them actually it's not. And we'll actually highlight the bits that are important that they think are completely irrelevant. That will keep humans very much at the forefront of advice. Whether there'll be enough people in the future for us to give that advice to is another matter. And that will then bring banks back in to the equation. What do they want? They want to shorten the gap between them and the consumer. Currently, we're in the middle of that. If they can find a way to navigate around us, they will do. If that involves leaning on the regulator to make rules a bit more simplistic for the benefit of the consumer, that could happen. That will take us out of the equation. But I think advice is essential, but I think actually I'll go the opposite way. It's tweed to be able to have a nice little coffee shop arrangement, but I don't go into the high street thinking I must have a cup of coffee and speak to a mortgage broker. Now, that will work on Mike's high street, it wouldn't work on my high street. I don't think any of our sons that will ever cross their mind to go and have that kind of debate. Easy if you maybe link with an estate agency. Foxtons did that very well, didn't they? 20 years ago, absolutely changed the high street with that model. So maybe there's still scope for that. I think we need less brokers doing a better job for fewer people.
One of the things that we were touching on is actually or one of the questions that certainly I was going to ask you both is, do we need to backfill, bring new talent in, more talent into the industry? And your suggestion might be there that actually no, we don't need.
There is that gap between our current breakdown of what a mortgage broker looks like and what the future could look like. I think it is very top heavy weighted to the older generation. People that started 20, 25 years ago, and we discussed previously, they're in their fifth doom cycle now after COVID and Brexit and the credit crunch and trustonomics, and they haven't got the will or the energy to wait for the cycle to come back again. So there's a degree of people exiting the industry to a degree. Are there enough young people coming through? We need more MAB academies to maybe educate them. But then the problem you'll have there is the knowledge gap. You'll have some very highly qualified individuals and all the brains are gone to Dubai, put the trotters up, on a sunbed. And that's the problem, that we're not educating people how. It's not a qualification, is it, the job? How often do you use CMAP in your day-to-day advice process?
0.
Correct. All right, and that's the problem. We have this entry level, you pass it, and a bit like the driving test, only after you've passed you learn how to drive. We can teach kids to have all the qualifications in the world and how to pass an exam, teach them how to liaise with a multimillionaire with a complex family structure. You can only learn that on the job.
Yeah,
and there aren't a lot of on-the-job training opportunities. Plenty of classroom opportunities, not on-the-job. We are useless at bringing new talent in at London Money. We're just so old school. We do it in our sleep. We think it's very straightforward. Trying to pass that down a generation is virtually impossible from our point of view.
Yeah, we talked about in part one the rise of people working in gig economy, and obviously working in the gig economy means that you're going to have a more complex income profile, which means it's not like you're going to have six pay slips from an employer that you can shove in front of a mortgage underwriter and get a mortgage offer on the back of it. You're going to need to specialist skills on the broking side to package that and put that forwards.
But people have complicated their lives as well, and all the time this has been going on, we now have blended families, we have legacy debt issues, we have overly complicated income structures, we have complex properties now that were never really complex before but suddenly are. Leasehold flats in London being a good example.
Can we just touch on the leasehold flats in London, because it was brought up, and I'm curious as to what is the driver of that? Why is that the proverbial red-headed stepchild right now?
Well, lots of reasons, but one of the big ones is service charges. So, a 200 or 300 quid a month service charge wasn't the end of the world when rates were at 1%. Now they're at 4.5%. It's a big difference, and you've got
that eats into affordability, right?
Yeah, you've got the Grenfell stuff and the cladding issues. People that have got these, like they're paying for fire walkers to literally walk around the flats 24 hours. So
we're waking watch. Yeah,
Yeah, so it's really difficult to sell, or impossible to sell some of these properties. Then you've got a lot of these flats that were bought with the Help to Buy scheme, which I never thought was a phenomenal idea. I thought it was great for the house builders, but not so much for a lot of the people that were using them. And they've now got to try and sell those to people. Maybe they've had the properties for 5, 6, 7 years. They don't have that new shiny feel to them. Plus, that person's not going to get the government help. So they've dropped quite dramatically, because obviously I keep an eye on what's happening in our areas, and real challenges.
Yeah. And buy to let, actually, because a lot of new builds were bought as buy to let, and again, it works very nicely in a 1% world.
Yeah,
doesn't work in a 4.5%-5% world. So you have these. You don't have to look at some of the property portals to see how many rental properties are on the market right now, and there's a significant amount, and they are hoping for 2022 prices. In a 2025 environment, there's a big disconnect there. In the old days, another landlord would have come out and bailed out that landlord, but their numbers don't work either. So they just sit there. So all those things thrown into the pot make leasehold a good opportunity if you're prepared to take maybe a longer term view that leasehold reform will happen, cladding will become a thing of the past, and rates might come back down.
Just got to make sure you're not catching a falling knife.
Sorting someone else's problem out.
Yeah, so the kind of people that I'm dealing with is what you call your classic kind of dinner table landlords, where they'd buy 2 or 3, and it was mainly either for a pension pot or for kids. And I haven't seen any of them like selling up. Like all the kind of the doomsters on Twitter are like, I was going to be a max exodus of landlords, and every single year they've been, when I've been speaking to them, they're not buying new stuff, but they have to refinance it. And they've been fixing in again for 5 years, because that's pretty much the only option they've got with the rental stress testing. So they're forced down a certain path. Until this year, I've seen so many trying to sell up. A few of them, well, quite a lot of them, though, haven't been able to get the prices that they were expecting. So they're forcing to kind of hold on and keep them. But this is kind of
reluctant landlords still.
Yeah, reluctant landlords, because they bought them. We're thinking, right, we're not going to make any money probably on the rental, but we'll get the capital growth. And then capital growth sort of disappeared for the last 9 plus years, because we had a real kind of boom year going into, they brought the sort of changes in 2016 with the additional stamp duty. That that should have been a signal for people to sell, but we always work the opposite way. So it's a real signal for people to buy. So we had a great year of arranging loads of kind of buy to let mortgages for people buying properties. But when you're in the midst of it, for me, I just felt like those properties would just keep going up and up and up, as we've kind of seen previously, and now they've been they're sitting with a real burden.
A lot of flats that haven't gone up in value.
Yeah.
Since that, if you bought, very easy to buy the wrong property at the wrong time, and I think a lot of that happened in a very concentrated period, 16, 17, 18. People still buying flats after Grenfell because no one knew the implications of Grenfell. Suddenly, cladding became an issue, safety became an issue, and rightly so. And then, the other thing that we didn't mention was lockdowns. That dash for space that people went for. Suddenly that 2-bed flat in Hoxton didn't seem quite as attractive as a 3-bed semi down in Hove. And that filters into people's attitude to work and hybrid working. You don't need to be as accessible to London 5 days a week as you did maybe 7 or 8 years ago. So all of that has made leasehold flats difficult in London.
I think it's coming back though. The kind of working from home hasn't worked quite as well as a lot of people hoped for. So I think I'm seeing a big return. When I'm speaking to people, big return back to the office. Although saying that, when I've got the new office opening, so we're recruiting for people at the moment. A lot of people are asking, "Is it?"
Can I work from home?
Yeah, and I'm like, no, absolutely not. It's going to be
the thing is, I find it kind of remarkable that if you offer someone in a suburban location or a semi-rural location, you offer I understand the reluctance for people to have to spend, 3 or 4 grand a year in a season ticket to get the train to have to stand on a train for 45 minutes, as I often have to do, to go to the office. I can understand the reluctance there, but for me, the dream office location would be somewhere 15, 20 minutes drive from my home, and somewhere you can drive there, drive back. You're not spending ages commuting, but you still got a workplace that you can go to. And you're obviously based in suburban North London. To me, that's just staggering that people were like, "Oh, can I work from home?" We're actually losing a member of staff. He's going to go work for a specialist bank, and I think the big driver for him is he's from the Midlands. He gets to move to the Midlands but earn a London wage. But this specialist bank, they only need them in the office 1 or 2 days a week. So you think, well, but the problem there is that you just, I think we're all kind of advocates for office working. As I think the impact is what that has on the development of younger members of staff, and also the culture that that breeds.
But that goes back to what I said a moment ago, Michael, that technology is changing behaviour. So up until 2020, before lockdowns, we all thought we were working smart. And then suddenly, over the course of 6 months, we realised we probably weren't. Zoom became a thing. The consumer got savvy with that. So previously you might have said, I need a face-to-face meeting. Well, the client's going to go, no, you don't. I insist upon it. Well, I'll find a broker that doesn't. So you have to move with that change in behaviour. I'm an office advocate. I like coming in. I'm old school. Even it just means we just come in and go to the pub. I'll still come in because that's an important part of my culture, as it is probably for Mike and for yourself. But that's going to be harder. If you talk about our kids, the idea of them going to an office 5 days a week on the train at 7:15 from a commuter belt to work, I think is unlikely to happen.
Does sound a bit soul-destroying when we talk about it, doesn't it?
Yeah, but, scary. It's only 10 years away.
Yeah, but a lot of people are now doing this kind of hybrid working, but that hybrid working involves them working for them gym or something like. People like to like the David Lloyd and Finchley. It's like there's so many people working at doing an hour's work for their for their employer, and then they're lying by the pool for another hour, and then they're just checking their emails and stuff like that.
But if you've got an internet connection, you are at work these days.
I don't think you get, as an employer, I don't think you're getting your
that fills me with just absolute. I mean, theoretically, you're right, yeah. But if you're on call. But so you've got an internet connection, you're therefore on call. I mean, go on.
Our job is not situation specific, is it? We don't. If this was our office, we wouldn't have to come in here today to do that job. If we were a doctor, we'd have to go to the hospital. So our job is very much white collar, technology driven.
Okay, which is a fair point, but we talk about training and development of younger staff, right? So how do you right? You talk about high value mortgage, complex income profile, blah blah blah. You know, your 21-year-old fresh CMAP graduate turns around, they sitting from their mum and dad's kitchen table or their bedroom, the desk in their bedroom, still probably from the days when they were 12 at, the parents got from IKEA, so they're barely fit. How are they going to learn how to handle and process that case if they're not sat next to you, or sat next to one of you experienced hands teaching them how to do it?
It's impossible. I go back to my Alexander Hall days where there was 6 or 7 really seasoned brokers. So if you had a case over, I could literally just turn around to my colleague, we discuss the case, and he might say, look, I don't know, but our Stave, for example, he'll know, he's done something like that. You miss that from the working from home. It's completely gone.
But also it's like lender policies, right? You have a case, you think, I'm going to go to Nationwide, just picking them out of a hat, right? And the client's got this on their credit profile or whatever, right? And you go, yeah, well, Nationwide won't do that because it doesn't fit. And you go, you just saved a failed application, right? If you're doing that remotely, you just don't know. You can put it in a WhatsApp or in a Teams chat, and you might get something back like that. But how long are you going to wait for everyone to have read that message and to have given you that feedback? If you do that, the technology's not helping you there, it's slowing you down.
But this is one of the problems that I think we have with mortgage intermediation right now. It's very fragmented. So you've even got very seasoned brokers working from home on their own. It's very much a lone wolf type of industry, to agree. There's an awful lot of one-man bands dotted around the country. Even if they're ARs of a network, they're still one-man bands. And speak to the lenders, they say that an awful lot of their time and resource is wasted by brokers sending it to the wrong lender in the first place. So it's not necessarily age specific, it might just be talent specific. A 21-year-old broker who wants to learn and do the job well is just as capable as a 50-year-old who's been doing it for 20 years.
But they might just be set in their ways, right? And they'll be like, well, I just go to these four. I only ever go to these four lenders, right?
Correct.
Yeah, and that's just crazy. Like some mortgage brokers have a badge of honor. We never use Barclays because Barclays are terrible. I used their system once and it was like, and I'm like, kick them off. You know, everything that we should do should be at the forefront of what's best for the customer, and, you know, not for us. So when I read on these forums that someone said, oh, I won't use Barclays because of X, Y, and Z, I just feel like, you know, I feel like reporting them to Barclays and getting struck off. You know, they're not looking after their client. So that's my big peeve. That drives me absolutely insane when I see something like that.
Which filters back to Mike talking earlier about improving standards. CMAP is too easy. I think we may have had this conversation in the previous podcast. We need to be looking. The canary down the coal mine, the proof of concept for us as mortgage professionals is the IFA world. And they are 15 years ahead of us. They reinvented themselves and they're doing very well as a result. And we're still limping along thinking it's 2005.
I'll slightly challenge that, which is that I feel like in the IFA world, the bar of standards has been set so high that many IFAs, I've got a friend who's an IFA. He manages about £200 million worth of private client investments. He's 60. He wants to sell. He wants to move on. He can't because he can't because he can sell to, obviously he can sell to St James's Place or something like that. But these are clients probably not too dissimilar to your own clients that they've built long-standing personal relationships with, where they, you know, to the extent that they've even given eulogies at their funerals. So because of that closeness in personal relationship, they have to be very selective about who they sell to, and he won't sell to an SJP because they know the moment they sell to SJP, the standards will go down, the fees will go up, right? But the problem then is that, okay, well, I've got another friend who wants to go into the IFA world. He's got to spend a year training up. I said to Ian, who's the guy who wants to sell, I said, look, Neil's thinking about doing it. Why don't? He said, look, I haven't got, at the moment, I've got to do some big regulatory exercise. It's going to take the next 6 months. I can't train Neil. I can't get him there. So then, you know, and Neil's been working in fund management for 20 years. You know, he's a really experienced guy. So I think that I think you want to raise the standards of mortgage broking. That's fine, and I think, but I don't know necessarily if you want to go full IFA route, because I think that's just that I think makes that barrier to entry too high, and you're going to lose more than you gain from that. That'd be my personal reason.
People said that when RDR came in, and you speak to the vast majority of IFAs now, that's not been the case. They do have the same succession planning issues that we could have in our sector, older generation wanting to bail out. But I think there's probably a flood of younger IFAs coming through who are willing to learn. And I mean, you can't blame the wider industry for not having a succession plan in your own business. That's an individual's fault, not the industry's fault.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. This podcast is sponsored by Avamore Capital. Avamore Capital is a development and bridging lender based in London, but lending all over England and Wales, lending on projects from £250,000 all the way up to £25 million on bridging, development, refurb and part complete developments. Please visit www.avamorecapital.com to find out more. Do you think there's a halfway house though, where you could look at some sort of continuing professional development, but effectively a bit like a kind of, you know how you don't have to retake your driving test? Yeah. Like CMAP's a bit like the driving test, right? You don't have to retake you don't even have to retake it when you're 70, right? The driving test.
Give you an eye test or something like that.
Exactly. Yeah. Do an eye test. Do you think there's an element of like actually just like driving tests, you probably should have to retake the test at some point?
I don't think that's implausible. I think there might be Netherlands that do that. They have to an annual test. Have you been retested? And we do CPD. We all do CPD. That's part and parcel of the job. We're doing CPD without even realising it sometimes. But I haven't been tested. If I was an electrician operating on my 1996 MAQ qualification, I'd be a danger to the country. You won't want me to come around and rewire your house, trust me. But no, it's a very valid point And it would be to my detriment. I would not survive the intellectual upgrade that the industry needs. I'll be one of the first dinosaurs to go.
He's lying. He's very intelligent, so he wouldn't have any problems whatsoever.
No, but some people can pass tests, some people can do exams. I didn't go to university for that reason. I'd rather test myself in another environment than in an academic environment. But if there was an increase from where we are now to level 4, which is what the IFAs went through in 2012, which is a pseudo degree level qualification, I'm out. I'm gone. I won't have a problem with it. There has to be a cull at some given stage in most industries.
I don't think we can afford to lose Martin, bashing today. But, with his expertise, and I think he plays himself down a little bit, but I think we've definitely got to get the qualification standard up a little bit. I think CMAP is too easy to pass.
It sort of feels like you go to the toilets in the Commercial Finance Expo, and when you get it's like pull here for CMAP,
£1.
Yeah, which is a rehash of a joke about Isle of Man banking licenses. It was like that you could get you can get them at the airport in Douglas, but joking aside, I mean, look, I do agree with you about wanting to raise the standards, but I do at the same time I think that. I still feel like you need to. We are also talking about a slightly different cohort of, intellectually, and this is not to talk down about mortgage brokers, but there is probably the bar is a slightly higher bar of intellectual base. The base level of intellect for an IFA is probably slightly higher than a mortgage broker, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, I'm a big champion of mortgage brokers and my colleagues. I think we work extremely hard. Often, most of them underpaid. I think the average salary for a mortgage broker in the UK is like under 40 grand, and they're working crazy hours to kind of get that kind of income. So, I'm a big advocate of mortgage brokers. Martin would have like a Thanos type goal.
Just me and you, Mike. It'll be fine.
I just think, just what you mentioned about, some additional testing along the line. I'm part of a network, so they always kind of do annual testing. I don't find them that much of a challenge, but I'm quite good at kind of tests and stuff like that. So it's not much of a challenge for me. But I do think, that's good in terms of keeping up sort of professional development. And we could just, I don't want to go the full IFA route, because I think there was, the IFA lost quite some big numbers on that. So, I think we're about right in terms of mortgage advisors. Maybe lose a couple of thousand. There's a couple of rogues that I'd like to see.
Well, they're called Adam or Seb.
We'll start with those two and work our way up.
No, that's no. I think I guess we'll that will remain to be seen. Should we talk about your book?
Oh, I thought you'd never get around to it.
How
finally? Something interesting.
What? Well, Mike, you've read it. You've read the book. What's your review? What would be your review of?
I'm like its biggest publicist. I think it's me and Hayley from Moving Legal. Like I bought 3 copies of it. It's those 3 copies have been all around the world. I've posted on.
Been lots of holidays.
He sat right next to me, but I'll always give him honest feedback because he's a friend. And I thought the book was really, really good. I read it in literally a matter of days when I was in holiday in Tenerife in April. Just a real, what I call a real page turner. So I thought it was a very, very good book. Very good. I'm looking forward to the next one.
So,
all right, house prices are going to go up then. If we're playing that game.
I'll only ever give my honest opinion on it. He's more of a devil's advocate. So if I'd written the book, even if he loved it, he'd say it was rubbish, just to create a bit of a Twitter storm.
Well, having seen, I mean, we did touch on social media earlier, but having seen Martin's LinkedIn posts, obviously there's so many. I don't think you'd ever be in any danger of doing a self-congratulatory LinkedIn post. So
I think I'm a very self-depreciating individual. And I think that's important that you have that. There are lots of overinflated egos out there, particularly on LinkedIn. But it just goes back, we are interesting people. Even if we don't realise it, we are interesting. We're not and shouldn't be defined by mortgages. That is a function of what we do, which goes back to why don't we just meet socially? We became friends 3 or 4 years ago. We've had loads of beers. I've paid for most of them. You know, some things don't change. Seb's always there hanging on, trying to get a freebie. It'd be great to get Adam out of his lofts. Lewis Shaw. We've met IFAs, haven't we? David Penny, who's become a good friend now. Just off. There is so much more to us than house prices.
So back to the book. Yeah, stay on topic. Yeah, not need to work on your publicity game, Martin.
I keep telling him that. Yeah.
But what I think a lot of people were probably in the back of their mind, myself included, will all dream of. We all say, "Oh, one day I'll write a book. One day I'll write a book." But you actually went and did it. What was the spark where you're like, right? And also, is it a fictional book or is it
fictional? Thanks for clearly not reading it.
Yeah.
No, it is a fictional book. Lockdown was perfect for anyone. I look back at that now and I thought that lockdown was a great leveler for everyone. All of us were sat at home. Premiership footballers were sat at home. Royalty was sat at home. Everyone was sat at home, apart from Boris Johnson. Everyone was sat at home doing nothing. That was a great reset for everyone. I just saw that as an opportunity that if you didn't grasp that and do something different, we'd soon be out the other end and normality would return. So I used that as kind of a launch pad for it. Your point about people wanting to write a book, I think you've mentioned that you want to write a book.
Yeah.
Mike actually, for all his faults, and there are plenty of them, is a very creative individual. You can see that in how he tweets. 80% of people in the world want to write a book or believe they can write a book, but only 3% ever get around to doing it, and then only 0.5% ever get it published. So it's a huge attrition rate from idea to execution, but I didn't want to get to the end of my life with just mortgage broker on the gravestone. I just wanted to see if there was an alternative me inside, and that was the motivation.
And do you have any aspirations for commercial success, or is it presumably self-published?
If you think mortgage industry is fragmented and dysfunctional, you try looking at the publishing world. They've got massive headwinds. AI. There are businesses out there now in America that will write 8,000 books of original content every year. Well, that's 8,000 authors out of a job. Amazon has totally changed the publication to consumer model. You could order a book today, and I'm sure you will after this podcast, but that will be at your house tomorrow, and that might be the only book of mine that is printed off today. So print on demand has changed
Amazing.
Publishing and Waterstones and retail outlets massively. So someone like me who's coming at this quite late, I'm the wrong demographic approaching the industry at the wrong time. So commercial success won't come easily for me. It would be nice to have, but it would be very difficult because I'm not the author that the industry is crying out for, because they have to sell books. That's the only thing they're interested in. Not about the content. If it was about the content, Katie Price would not be doing her 55th autobiography this year. So it's about who's got the following, clicks back to social media, who can shift the units, which is why J.K. Rowling will always do well, Richard Osman will do well, Steve, established names will do well.
Got a
platform. Or Z-list celebrities, or that's where the market is. It's dumbed down. George Orwell will probably not make it as an author today for all those reasons, which is a shame for the wider cultural position of the country, but that's a fact of life.
It's a slightly depressing picture you paint, because I think you talk about George Orwell, you think people with big ideas and also, ideas and also ideas that perhaps are maybe right of centre leaning, shall we say, maybe not right of centre, but maybe a bit more libertarian in the current climate. Unless you've got that platform, it's almost like the gobbier you are, the easier time you would have to shift copies of the book, for example.
Well, you wouldn't even if your platform's big enough, you wouldn't even have to work. Somebody will do it for you. Arguably, someone would probably write it for you. Yeah. Ghostwriting is a huge, subversive, hidden industry where someone will go, I'll put my name to that, and they won't even know what's in it.
Yeah, unless you've been on something like a Love Island and you've got these million followers.
And those days are long gone for me, trust me.
But back to your point, he's an egotistical maniac, so he would absolutely love the fame, and I'd love to go to one of his literary events if he made it. So I'm bigging him up.
If you did something tomorrow that created 200,000 followers for you overnight, a publisher would be all over you.
Because you've a publisher and probably lots of other. Lots of other industries.
You can monetize that platform very easily.
So someone like Charlie, who we talked about, is probably starting to knock on the door of that sort of territory.
I think so. But I think if you said to me 10 years ago, if you had 20,000 followers, I'd be thinking, "Whoa, that's a decent size account." I don't know if it is.
It's probably not today. No,
you need 200,000. Inflation has also affected followers. So I think if you had 200,000, you'd probably get somewhere.
I saw something really interesting from one of the avid doomsters. A guy, I think his name's Darren Degan, who's got a good YouTube channel, and he had like 50,000 followers, and he's posting an insane amount of content. And he was talking about the money he got off for it, and it was like 15 grand a year. And I think I'm downplaying the amount of followers he's got. So it was like a full-time job what he does. And then when you realise,
it's very depressing that how little you make per view, right?
Well, on the book side, so I went through this agony of publication, all for £2.35 for every book sale.
Yeah.
And you do not do it to get rich unless you can break through that wall into another world.
I've put £7.5 in this pocket.
Yeah,
what a nice guy I am.
Which I'm still about £1,000 down on beer. So but thanks anyway. You've bought one beer back.
Well, I mean, my wife self-published a children's book under a nom de plume a few years ago. But again, it was like whether she ever had any commercial ambitions for it or not. I think the main thing was that she got it out of the system and she scratched the itch. But
David Williams is a good example. I live in Tunbridge Wells. I was walking down High Street a few weeks back, and there was this snake of 500 people queuing. There isn't 500 people in Tunbridge Wells, I don't think, but suddenly they were all queuing up to go into Waterstones because David Williams is there. Okay, is he the Roald Dahl of the modern world in terms of children's stories? No, but if you've got some fame behind you and a platform and support from the right people, you can become a respected children's author, even if you don't write it. I'm not saying he doesn't. I don't know, but
yeah.
Well, speaking of that sort of inflation of kind of follower numbers to actually make any money. I mean, you ever see the chart of OnlyFans creators, and it's like
those days are definitely beyond me. If that's where you're going. I'll give it a go now.
Frightening thought.
Everyone has their everyone has their own niche, and we're not here to kink shame. So if you will probably be someone's cup of more than one person's cup of tea. Yeah, you only need 1,000 true fans, right, to make money out of something. But I think that I think OnlyFans creators something like it's like 0.01% of OnlyFans creators make money, and then that 0.01 makes insane amounts of money, and I think it was like something really sad. It's like most OnlyFans creators most of their revenue comes from people that know them locally. Yeah. This is more disturbing, and relatives.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. That's definitely Rotherham.
But I think you're right. I saw something about the amount of sort of young girls that are on.
It's more than 8.
Yeah, it was just
in America. It is a ridiculous.
It was a scary. Someone who's got a 14-year-old daughter, and you read those kind of like statistics, you're just like, so worrying where we are as a society. And this just goes back to some of the stuff that we're talking about.
Get your daughter on CMAP as quickly as possible.
All the Lawlers working together, could you imagine?
But joking aside, I mean, I said to my oldest, I said he's not not stupid, but he's not super academic, and I said to him, and I've said to him, listen, don't worry, I'll always be able to get you a job, because with relationships with the number of commercial mortgage brokerages that I have, it's like, okay, I'll be able to. I'll know someone who'll be able to give him a go, get him CMAP and get him started. I do think it's, to go back to it. I think it is. as a starting point, and if he goes in a completely different direction, that's fine. But at least you get him on the job ladder. And I mean, I don't think he's going to be. I don't think he's definitely not going to be an OnlyFans creator. So,
but if, like, for example, if one of my kids want a job, I could definitely get them a job as an estate agent, which I think is a great entry level to, if you can make a fantastic living out of that. But it does teach you some great sort of people skills and sales skills. I think it's a great industry to start in.
Well, what do you think of that, Martin? You think I do agree with Mike. I think estate agency or being a lettings agent, you learn a lot of people skills that maybe younger, our kids' generation maybe lack.
I think the thing that Mike was right there is about people skills, whether that's estate agent or whatever, that people skill, we took it for granted, I think, looking back. We just assumed that's what people did. But I think now, as we go into that tech-heavy world, human interaction is going to get less as a result. I'd love to have been an estate agent in Iceland. I think I'd have been quite good at that. Yeah. I think that's possibly a missed career there, where whilst I don't have a massive issue with financial services, it is heavily regulated, and that does nullify creativity. And estate agency would have allowed a degree of creativity that we can't maybe do in the day job, so that would have been something quite interesting to do. But did you want to be in financial services when you were a kid?
No, I wanted to be a footballer.
Exactly. This is the whole point. This is the whole point, isn't it? Suddenly, life happens, and you're sat in a really hot room, all talking about house prices. When actually, reality was we lose that innocence of youth. And that goes back to the book. I just wanted to make sure that was in me, and that just wasn't a one-off. And I think if I could go, I would. This is good. This is good news for the industry. If I could become commercially successful at writing, I would leave mortgage broking. I've done my shift. I've done my turn, and I'd rather go and do something with the last 20 years of my life that I think is a new challenge for me. Could be more fulfilling, and I could leave Mike in peace. I love I'm sure appreciate.
Yeah, I love mortgage broking, so I'm never going to do anything else.
He ain't never leaving.
I love the job, so I'm a very different thing. I want to be doing this for another 20 years.
It's probably too late for you to be a footballer as well, isn't it?
Definitely after pulling my hamstring trying to go for a quick single in a dad's cricket match yesterday, I can confirm that. We're playing. My oldest plays rugby at quite a good standard, and we were doing summertime touch at his club on a Wednesday night, and I was an okay rugby player back in the day, but I think shall we say my hamstrings didn't my 43-year-old hamstrings were not doing what my 21-year-old rugby brain wanted them to do, and so when they went ping, so I've had that very much edged out of me. But do you think maybe the sequel to Goodbye Morecambe could involve a character, or your next book could involve a character who's
dashing Michael from North London?
Well, as I say, that you could relive the life you didn't have in a book, and centre it around an estate agent.
I want to be a success, not a failure. Everyone, look, the stories everywhere. Someone said to me asking me about the book, and we're surrounded by it. It's just like people say, I don't know what to tweet about. We're surrounded by things to tweet about. It's just focusing on being aware of it, that perceptual pickup. There's stories about everything. Mike once said to me he wants to write a book, and I've tried to encourage him to do it.
Yes.
But at some point, you have to find that time to do that thing that doesn't get in the way of the day job. Otherwise, we will end up with just mortgage broker and tombstone.
How do you resist the temptation now? Because you probably, if you wrote that in lockdown, that was kind of pre-Chat GPT. How do you resist the temptation to just go and have Chat GPT to do the
personal pride? You cannot allow. The thing that separates us from the chimpanzees are our creativity and our opposable thumbs. If we start handing over the future of culture to algorithms, just give up now. What's the point? Think what we've achieved as a species over hundreds of years. It's phenomenal. We can't let computers take that away from us. We have to continue to innovate and create.
And I think people will see that inauthenticity. Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
It screams out at me. I can't go on LinkedIn for more than 2 minutes because it just screams out at me that people are just, using ChatGPT and they're putting big realms of it and with a cheesy picture. I literally, and Martin said that we kind of lost that creativity, and I think people do struggle. So I end up putting, just the craziest stuff I see on LinkedIn these days. So I find it a very challenging platform to spend more than 5 minutes on.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I think it's the emojis, isn't it? It's the emojis at the start of every and one of my he's actually a big fan of podcasts. He's a recruiter friend of mine, and he did a post, and I phoned him up and I called him out and I said, just so you know, everyone knows now that you wrote that with ChatGPT because it's just because it's the format, And I've been guilty of it in the past, and I do get it to help me write the odd LinkedIn post. Not that I've posted for a few months, but it's just so obvious.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we just have to cling to the authenticity angle, and I know the vast majority of people aren't clever enough to rely on AI. I don't think. Certainly of our generation. So I think the authentic posters, and they kind of stand out a little bit. And the pre-written drivel tends to get no engagement.
I think that's true.
Just like I read that yesterday.
Well, I think also I also wonder if the LinkedIn algorithms worked out it can spot the AI generated content as well and suppresses the number of impressions.
I think the reason why people put emojis on the end of the line, I don't know whether this is an urban myth, but someone said it increases engagement.
I think it did once upon a time.
Maybe previously,
yeah.
But things have moved on a little bit, I think, since then. Maybe it's like you said at the start, maybe AI will end up eating AI for the benefit of AI.
Yeah.
Bring it on. Skynet.
Skynet, yeah. Where's Sarah Connor when you need her, right?
Exactly.
I think that's a good bombshell to end on, guys. So I want to thank you both for coming in. Thanks to Mike Lawler and Martin Stewart for coming in. If you want to sort of if you want to give a proper plug for your book, Martin, where can people get hold of a copy?
It is on Amazon. If you just, I have one benefit of writing this book is that no one has created hashtag Goodbye Morecambe until I came along, so that hashtag now belongs to me, which could be a good thing or a bad thing. But if you put Goodbye Morecambe into Google, it will come up, and you can.
You've got a website, haven't you?
There is a website as well. It doesn't really, everything goes through Amazon, so you can order a physical copy, or you can do Kindle, or if you've got
an audiobook.
People keep asking me for an audiobook, right? And the problem with that is that's another £2,000 of expense.
Wow.
To go in to create £2.35 in royalties. I'd have to sell 1,000 books to justify doing an audiobook, because you need someone to read it. It takes 10 hours to read a book out. You need a studio like this for 2 days. So at the moment, I am bootstrapping this and using your podcast to sell some books, hopefully. But if you look at Amazon, you'll find that. And if you do read it, if you can give me a review, that is the only weapon I've got against David Walliams and J.K. Rowling, are the reviews. It's the only thing I can use externally to try and self-promote the book.
All right. And Mike, want to give yourself a plug? How can people get hold of you?
Not really.
No.
I'm a bit under at the moment, but no, you can find me on kind of the normal. They say it's a Mortgage Mike Lawler on the normal things to say, but yeah.
And soon coming to a shop front in Barnet.
Yeah, Barnet High Street. So we're going to be there, and conveniently we're right next door to an estate agent. So yeah, we'll get I'm sure it's going to be very successful.
I've no doubt we'll have to go and pop in and pay a visit. Well, guys, thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure having you. It's been really good fun, and yeah, maybe we'll set this up again in a few months' time. Yeah, and yeah, we can do it in a pub. Yeah, or we'll have some beers with us as well. All right, and thanks as well to Kev as always for doing the technical bits in the background. I've been Michael Dean. You can find me on the internet at property_funder. Thanks as always to Avamore Capital, our sponsor, and we will talk to you again on the next one. Cheers and bye bye.